and then without realizing it, got it, and then realized what? This is not what I wanted. This is not what I expected. This is not what I thought it would be. Even if you were warned, and I told you that I would share a story from my life, and so I remember when I was a kid, and this will spark with my mom, as I start getting into the story, she'll realize probably what I'm talking about, and you'll see her start laughing, and then you'll get to laugh with her at the end. But as I thought about it for me as a kid, I remember, so we were growing up, and I saw something on TV that I decided I wanted to try, right? And I've talked about before, there are certain meals that I don't eat anymore because we grew up eating them a lot, and just, you did what you did. You did what you had to do to keep food on the table. But one of the things my mom makes that we will still eat to this day is her lasagna. And it's one of the things she makes. It's a comfort meal. We still enjoy it. She'll make it every once in a while, and it's a good time as had by all. But I remember as a kid, we were living in Bullard, Texas, and I don't know where I got the dumb idea that this should be improved upon, this certain meal. But for some reason, I got the really dumb idea that this meal should be improved upon, I'm sure it was something on TV, by adding eggplant to said lasagna. Slicing eggplant, putting it in. The chef in the room just looked at me with much disdain in his eyes. So I know I was wrong. I know I was wrong, all right? I learned. But I said I wanted to try this because I saw it on TV and it would be better. And I remember my mom saying, it is not what you think it is. It's not going to work. You're not going to like it. We're not doing that. And I pushed it and pushed it and pushed it till eventually she said, what? We'll try it, but you're on the hook for it, sucker. You're gonna eat it. If we make it, it's gonna get eaten. It's not going to waste. And that's fine. It'll be fine. It'll be great. And she made it and did it and followed the recipe, and then it came out of the oven, and I said, look, it looks delicious. And I remember taking the first bite, and my brain instantly said, what? This is not good. We have chosen poorly. Should have listened, and now I'm on the hook for this. And it was something that I was warned, right? She had told me that it was not a smart idea, and I kept pushing it, and I kept pushing it, and I kept pushing it, and eventually she realized what? The only way he's going to get this out of his mind is if what? We got to do it. And get it out of it, and just get it out of the train of thought. And we think about that, and as I thought about that story always comes to mind with me when I look at 1 Samuel chapter 8 and what Israel's about to ask of God. That, and even still today in our lives, are there times that we ask God for something without realizing what the consequences of that will be, and then when God tells us, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, instead of saying, hey, you're right, this was a poor idea, I should listen to you, we say what instead? Hey, I said what I said, I want what I want, let's go. And so we look at what's going on with Israel here. 1 Samuel chapter 8 starts here. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges over Israel. His firstborn son's name was Joel, and his second was Abadiah. They were judges in Beersheba. However, his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned toward dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. And so, some respect to the Israelites here, right? Like we always, and I'm guilty of it too, sometimes we get after the Israelites here and we're like, oh, those dummies asked for a king when they already had a good system. But as we look here at the beginning of chapter 8, what do we see by verse 3 was that Samuel's sons were doing what? Exactly the things that led to Samuel becoming the judge over Israel. Samuel's sons were going to dishonest gain. They were taking bribes. They were perverting justice. They were not doing what God had told the judges to do. So as much as Israel is guilty and about to be asking for a king, these judges, these new judges, Samuel's sons, are just as guilty because they weren't following with what they were supposed to be doing. And so for us as believers today, number one is that if we are in positions of authority, and as believers, God has given us positions of authority in aspects of our life. He has purpose for each and every one of us as believers. But as God has given us purpose, we must also understand that there is a requirement on us to do it His way. Right? So often you'll hear people say, do it the right way. No. Do it His way, which is always the right way. To serve people as God would have you to serve them. If God has put you in a position of authority, you are to serve others with servant leadership. To put their needs above your needs. To serve them in such a way that they can be better. What we see here are these judges that Samuel, these sons that Samuel was putting in place, were not doing that. They were perverting, they were doing the wrong things away from what God had said, which is leading the nation of Israel to make a decision that is going to cause problems for them. And so we see here, so all the elders of Israel gathered together, went to Samuel at Ramah, and they said to him, "Look, you're old, your sons do not follow your example, therefore appoint a king to judge us the same as all the other nations have." And so you imagine here what Israel's doing. Israel's looking around and they see these other nations around them. The other nations don't appear to be having the same issues they're having. So they say what? Well, if they're not having those problems, let's do what they're doing so that we can be better off, so that we can be like them. Which leads us to the second issue of this, church. Number two, be careful looking over other people's fences, right? You've heard it said before, the grass isn't always greener. Right? And you think about this for a minute, and we've all been guilty of this at one point or another, and the example I use, and I use this a lot for things here, is when we come to church, right? We've all been guilty of being in the car with the kids and the family, and on the way here, it's just, be quiet, we're going to church. I don't know what we're reading after church, we'll get something, just stop. And then you walk in the building, and what happens? Hey, how's everybody doing? We're great, we're wonderful. No, we weren't just screaming at each other in the car. Life is wonderful. Right? We put out the appearance of everything is good. And you think about this with your neighbors, right? You're not going to be, well, I would hope, that most of you, if you're going to have an issue with your spouse, you're not going to take it out on the front yard and have a screaming match in the front yard, right? You're going to do that inside or have that argument inside, and then when you go outside and the neighbors, hey, how's it going? We're great, we're wonderful. So the appearance is everything looks good, when the reality is there could be issues going on under the surface. And so the Israelites here are guilty of this. They see these other nations that appear to be doing okay, and because the appearance is okay, they say, well, we need that. Right? The other thing I look at with this is, because of my age, those of you that are my age in your early 40s, you might remember a show on MTV where they used to take people's cars and fix them up. And that show is very popular. They would take these broke down cars and they would do all sorts of neat stuff to them and put big sound systems in them and TV. I think they put a fish tank in one of them for a girl that lived in like South Carolina, which even as a kid I was like, that's dumb, those fish are going to boil. But they would do all of these things and they would put these elaborate paint jobs on these cars and they'd make them look wonderful. But they'd never do anything to the engine. So if the car came in overheating, it was leaving overheating. They didn't do any mechanical fixes to the car. Everything was cosmetic, right? And what does a car with a $10,000 paint job and all these other things they did to it matter if you can't leave the driveway with it? It's not serving its purpose, right? The appearances of things are not always what's really going on. Right? Going back to the chef in our room here, Tony, I know I pick on him a lot sometimes. Tony will be the first to tell you, a meal can look amazing, but taste disgusting. Hence my eggplant in lasagna. Something that didn't need to be messed with, right? It looked great. Looked phenomenal. Did not taste good. No fault to the person who made it. No fault to the chef who made it. It was on me. The reality is, the look is not always what the truth is. And so the Israelites here, seeing these other nations having a king, say, they appear to be going well, so give us that. Which, as Joseph was saying earlier, this is a twofold problem. Number one, they already had a king. God had told, this is the system, right? If they had an issue, they went to Samuel, they asked Samuel, Samuel went to God, God gave an answer. This system has worked as long as the nation of Israel has maintained their responsibility. And so we see verse 6 says this, when they said, give us a king to judge us, Samuel considered the demand sinful. So he prayed to the Lord, but the Lord told him, listen to the people and everything they say to you. They have not rejected you, they have rejected me as their king. Man, you talk about a dagger. Right? That statement right there, that's the equivalent. Some of you are going, well, yeah, that's rough. That's the equivalent of your parents when they told you that first time, right? I'm not mad, I'm what? I'm disappointed. Right? That person, you really care about their opinion. Maybe not your parents, but that person, you truly care about what they think about you. When that person looks at you and goes, man, I thought you knew better. Right? That dagger of, just, hit me with something. I'd rather you beat me than tell me that. Right? That's easier to get over. God here telling them, they haven't rejected you, Samuel, they've rejected me. Just a dagger. Should be a dagger to the people. They are doing the same thing to you that they have done to me since the day I brought them out of Egypt until this day, abandoning me and worshiping other gods. Which to this point with the nation, that's exactly what happened, right? When things are going good, the relationship with God is great. But the minute they impact struggle, then Israelites start to look for anything under the sun that might make their life better. And they'll follow anything. Right? When you think about that for us in our humanity, are we not guilty of the same things today? When things struggle or go wrong in our life, are there times in our lives where instead of going to the Lord with our issues and concerns, that we will look for anything else in the world to solve our problem? Right? I was watching last night on the news, and one of the stories on the news last night was the current lottery system's up to a bunch of money. Both of them are way up right now. I don't know what the number is. You'd have to play to know, and we don't play. But I know that number is way up there, and they talked about it last night. They said, oh, well, when those numbers get up like that, a lot of people buy tickets. Well, why is that? Because they think money is going to solve their problems, right? The solution is money. But when you study the numbers on this thing, what we realize is that 80 to 90% of lottery winners in the 10 years after they win do what? Declare bankruptcy. Most of them state that they wish they had never won. They wish they had never won the money because it impacted their life in such a negative way that they wish they'd never got it. We in our humanity will look for things that we think will solve our problems instead of trusting in the God that will solve our problems, but it will require us to take some responsibility for our actions. What humanity looks for is an easy way out. Humanity looks for a way out that states, hey, yeah, you messed up, but we're not going to hold you at fault and you can just go about your life. God holds us responsible for our actions, and praise Him that He does. That He holds us responsible, but we are not on the hook for the eternal consequences of those problems. Verse 9 picks up here. It says, listen to them, but you must solemnly warn them and tell them about the rights of the king who will rule over them. So even to this point where God is saying, listen to them, but what's He doing here? What is God doing in this moment? He's giving them one more chance. One more chance. And I think about this with the story I shared with you and with me. I remember Mom telling me this. We were at the store. I'd gone to the store with her, and I had found the eggplant in the produce department and said, we need to get this. And I remember standing in the store. I think it was Super One Foods in Tyler, Texas is where we were. Now, this is how much this memory sticks with me. I remember finding it, and I remember her telling me in the store directly, if I buy this, it will get eaten. To which in my mind as a kid, I am hearing, yeah, everybody's going to love it because I'm a genius. And everybody's going to tell me how awesome I am and how much better I've made this. Right? The reality is, what was Mom doing in that moment at the store? She's offering me one more chance to say what? Hey, maybe I got this wrong. Maybe I should be a little more trusting. In the same way, God right here, He's trying to give them one more chance. Hey, we're going to warn them about what the king would be allowed to do. And the hope being that they would say what? Hey, let's pump the brakes on this king idea and maybe rethink what we should be doing. And so with that, we hear this. Samuel told all the Lord's words to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, these are the rights of the king who will rule over you. He can take your sons, put them to use in his chariots and on his horses or running in front of his chariots. He can appoint them for his use as commanders of thousands or commanders of 50s to plow his ground or reap his harvest or make his weapons of war or the equipment for his chariots. He can take your daughters to become perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He can take your best fields, vineyards, olive orchards, and give them to his servants. He can take a tenth of your grain and your vineyards, give them to his officials and servants. He can take your male servants, your female servants, your best young men, and your donkeys, and use them for his flock, or for his work. He can take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves can become his servants. We pause there for a minute. Just think about what was said there for a minute. There was one word used over and over and over again of what the king can do. What can the king do? Take. The king takes, and he takes, and he takes, and he takes. That if you want this earthly king, the earthly king is going to show up and he's going to take from you. He's going to take from your things. He's going to take from your children. He's going to take from your servants. He's going to take from he's going to take everything. Meanwhile, the king they had, which was God, what has God done for them to this point? God was only giving them land, giving them opportunity, giving them things, taking care of them. Now they're going to go to a setup where he, the king, will take. Don't worry about her. She's doing her job. She's doing her job. Don't you worry about her one bit. God is hoping here that the people would hear this and say, what? Hold up. Let's rethink this idea. We might have chosen poorly. But yet again, God is giving them a what? He's giving them a choice. In the same way in our lives today, in your lives today, God gives you a choice. Every day you wake up, you have a choice. You can choose to serve and follow Him, or you can choose to chase the world and everything in it. And as we've said last week and in the weeks before, the world tells us it wants to do three things: steal, kill, and destroy. Why would we as believers, knowing what we know about God and His goodness, chase the thing that says all it wants to do is steal, kill, and destroy? Because like any abusive relationship, when the world shows up and we know it wants to steal, kill, and destroy, what does it say? Oh, this time it'll be different. Any abusive relationship that you've ever seen or unfortunately been a part of, that's what happens, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I promise this time it will be better. I'll be different. It won't end this way this time. I'll be better. What do we know about those relationships? It might be better for a minute, temporarily. But it is rarely better long-term or forever. And so the same thing here, when the world shows up on our doorstep and says, hey, I know last time we tried this that I just kicked you in the teeth and left you destroyed and miserable, and this time will be different. How many times are we as believers going to let the world kick us in the teeth before we realize all it wants to do is steal, kill, and destroy? Yet, so often we end up being like verse 19. The people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we must have a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations. Our king will judge us, go out before us, and fight our battles. If I was Samuel at verse 20, I would have turned around and been like, did you not hear the words I just said? You think the king's going to go out and fight your battles? God literally said at the beginning in verse 12 that He can appoint them as commanders and put them in front of His chariots. Which means what? The king isn't going to war. Who's going to war? You're going to war. Your children are going to war. Right now your king, who is God, stands out before you on the battlefield and wins the fight before you get there. When you put this earthly king in place, He's not going to run out on the battlefield on your defense. He's going to send your children to fight in His place. The Israelites didn't hear that. And their response was, we want to be like everybody else. Church, we as Christians today are not called to be like everybody else. You are not called to be like your neighbors. You are not called to be like the people around you at work. You are called to be set apart and to be like Christ. We are called to be different. And so often we find well-meaning Christians, well-meaning people of God that say, well, all I want to do is blend in. I just don't want to rock the boat. I just want to be this. I just want to get by day. We are not called to do that. We are called to be different. We are called to be set apart. We are called to look different than the world around us so that others would look at us and say those words. Hey, you're different. Something about you is different. You live life differently than everyone else. You act differently. You speak differently. You live differently than everyone else. Why is that? So then we would turn around and say what? Because of Christ. Why do I live, act, or be different? Because Christ called me and leads me to be different. To act differently. To speak differently. To treat people differently. 21 says this, Samuel listened to all the people's words and then repeated them to the Lord. Listen to them. The Lord told Samuel, appoint a king for them. And then Samuel told the men of Israel, each of you go back to your city. In Sunday school this morning we talked about this, that when we make a request of God, God offered them a lifeline. He said, you don't want this. This is going to end badly. And when the people said they wanted it anyway, what did God say? If you think you want this, I'm going to let you have it. For us today, we need to pay attention when God throws that stop sign up and says, no, you don't want this. It's going to end badly. We need to listen. We need to be people that would say, hey, I hear you loud and clear. Message received. Because if not, what will God do? He very well might say these exact words right here. I'm going to give you what you want. Even though I've told you it's going to end poorly. Same thing in my story from my life, right? I got what I wanted. Didn't end like I thought it would, though. And at this point, all Samuel can do is tell him, go back to your city. Go back. The call for us today, number one, we've got to be different as believers. We've got to speak, think, and live differently. You've got to be different as a believer. Number two, the ruler in your life needs to be Jesus. Quit chasing the world. And number three, when God says stop, stop. When God says go, go. But we need to be listening to what it is He has told us to do. So that we don't get to a point where God says, I've told you no, but you're going to have to figure it out. You can have it. Good luck. Or even more terrifying, when God would take His hand off and say, what? I'm done. You're on your own. The challenge for us, church, is to find where you're at. To make those adjustments. Maybe you're sitting here today and you're just knocking all these out of the park. That's amazing. That's great. Keep doing what you're doing, but look for opportunities to pour into those around you. But church, most importantly today, for those of you that may be in this room that you're chasing the world, today is the day that you should stand up and say, no more. I will no longer chase something that wants to steal, kill, and destroy me. With that in mind, let's pray. God, we thank you for today. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together to study your word. God, I pray that we would learn from the example laid forth here in Samuel, that we would seek you as our king and you alone. That nothing else would step into that place. Not the nation we live in, not the place that we work, not our family, not anything but you would be the thing we seek for leadership. That we would trust the world when it says it wants to steal, kill, and destroy, and we would even more so trust in you when you say that you desire for us to have life and to have it abundantly. And that we would seek the life that you have for us. That we would be the ambassadors and the hands and feet of your gospel that you have called us to be. That we would seek you with everything that we have. It's in your name we pray. Amen. If you'll stand with us, church.